Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." The fact that the Lord tells us not to lean on our own understanding simply means that our own understanding at times might fail us. We think we're seeing one thing when actually something else, something very different could be going on. And then in verse 6 it says, "In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path." The word acknowledge means to accept or admit the existence or truth of. It means to recognize the fact or importance or quality of. The fact is, the Lord's with us, and he wants to direct our path. And we need to practice his presence with us each day and recognize that he is walking with us as we walk out this life. He's the one who sees all and knows all, and we need to lean on him. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." Now, our sight can fail us. I've heard it said before that we're to believe half of what we see and nothing of what we hear. Now, that sounds a little bit extreme to me, but the truth is we can see things sometimes and we think we know what's going on. We think we have an understanding of what's happening, but it can be something entirely different. I remember when I was a teenager, I had some friends that worked at a gas station in West Ocean City on Route 50, and I would stop by there to get my gas. Well, one night I stopped and my friends weren't there, but the owner was there, and I gave him a couple dollars. Of course, when you're a teenager, you buy gas a couple dollars at a time, and when I was a teenager, gas was probably about 55 cents a gallon. And so I was there and I was getting gas, and all of a sudden, a state trooper police car pulled up in the parking lot with its lights flashing, came tearing into the parking lot, slammed on the brakes, stopped, jumped out, and grabbed the owner of the gas station. Well, the owner of the gas station, he was probably about 6'5", 250 pounds, and the state trooper was as big as he was. So there we are, two guys about 6'5", and myself at the gas station. I was the only one there. And they start wrestling. And I'm watching this unfold, and I wasn't even sure who I was supposed to root for. I was friends with the owner. I liked him. And then, of course, to me, what I thought I was seeing was a state trooper trying to arrest him. So my thought was, well, I wasn't sure what to think. My knees kind of went a little weak. And then I probably thought about what most teenagers have thought about. Hey, if they arrest the owner, I probably can get a free tank of gas. So I need to fill up my gas tank. Well, it probably was only a few seconds. It seemed like minutes to me, or even longer, but a few seconds, the two were wrestling, and then they looked at each other and started laughing. What was really going on was the state trooper and the owner of the gas station were good friends, and they hadn't seen each other for a long period of time. And the state trooper was in town to help out in Ocean City for the weekend. And they started laughing and then talking to each other. So, yes, I ended up having to pay for my gas. I thought I was seeing something going on, but what was really happening was something entirely different. In 2 Corinthians 5:7, it says for us to walk by faith and not by sight. Because sometimes we think we're seeing something and we're seeing something going on and it's entirely different. But also sometimes we don't see everything. We know in part and we see in part. Sometimes things are happening around us and we don't realize what's really going on. You know, a few years ago, my wife was picked for jury duty. We live in Delaware, and she was to go to Georgetown for jury duty. She had never been asked to do jury duty before, and she was a little nervous about it. So I told her I would drive her over and show her where she needed to go and explain to her what was going to happen. Well, the morning of jury duty, she got up early and she went over and she parked her car and she went in. And of course, she got signed in, and there was, over 100 people there ready. And anybody who's done jury duty knows it can be a little nerve-wracking. And they got everybody checked in, and my wife was sitting in the courtroom. It was filled up with people. And the bailiff came in, and the judge came in, and he was seated, and the bailiff came in. Before they picked any jurors, the bailiff said, Teresa McTernan, can you please stand? And my wife, just dumbfounded, stood up and he said, can you please come up? The judge would like to speak to you. Well, my wife had to stand up in front of these 100 people that were there or so for jury duty and walk up to the judge at the judge's bench. And she walked up there, and the judge leaned over and said, Miss Teresa, you're parked in my parking space. And my wife looked at him and said, well, I knew I had gotten a good spot. Well, they all laughed, but they wanted her to move her car. So my wife had to leave the courtroom, go out, get in our van, and of course, as you all know, anybody who's done jury duty in Georgetown, there is no parking lot for the jurors. So my wife had to find a spot on the side of the road, and of course, everybody was already there, so you would know how hard, difficult that was, and how far away from the courthouse she ended up. And then she had to walk back and go back into the courtroom, and they had held up all the proceedings until my wife had gotten back and sat back down. What had happened? My wife did not see the sign that said reserved, this parking space reserved for the judge. She did not see it. So sometimes we see things and something entirely different's going on. Sometimes we don't see things, and there can be consequences to that. What we need to do is stop trusting so much in what we think we're seeing and recognize that sometimes we don't see everything. 2 Corinthians 5:7. Walk by faith, not by sight. Eagle's Nest, be safe.